Welcome back, golfers, and today we are talking all things short game. We are going to look at reading different lies, what to expect out of these lies, and then more importantly, how you can adapt to these lies to get the best results in your short game. So the first lie we're going to look at is rough. All right. Now, you're not always going to get the same lie in the rough. You're going to get two differences here with the ball. And what we've got here today, I'm going to show you the difference between a ball that sits up on top of the rough and then a ball that sits sort of underneath the rough. Okay, so the grass is growing over the top of and it's sat down a little bit more. Super important to identify these two because they both require a slight different approach and potentially a different club as well to help you get the best results that you're looking for. Okay, so we're going to start with the one that's sat up. Okay, so quite nicely here, this golf ball is sat on the top of the rough. There's no real issue with what's going on, but if you think about that now being raised, as I put the club down on the surface, the ball is quite high relative to the top of the face here. Okay, so it's very close to almost missing the club face. All right, now if we played this in a way, for example, where we had the low point of the club or the club head moving down and under the ball or under the surface for a little bit too long and a bit too much, that ball sitting on top of the surface here would come over the top of the club. Okay, so I think we've all hit it, right? Certainly me, I've hit these before, where you go to play it, comes out, you end up going underneath the golf ball and it just pops up like a foot or two in front of you. Okay, so again, a really sat up lie like this one here, if I just start to work this club underneath it a little bit too much, it just comes out really dead. Okay, I don't get much on it. All right, now what we need to make sure we're doing with that lie, so we're just going to put another one slightly sat up, is we've got to control the length or the radius of the swing so that this club is moving on top of the rough, so it almost picks it off the top of the surface. Okay, it's not working this way and getting underneath it for too long. So something I like to do here is, if from a setup point of view, you're going to make sure you get yourself the longest or the tallest possible. The reference always everyone kind of says they feel like is more like Bryson. Okay, so they feel a bit more Bryson with a really long thumbs, long shaft, pointing up towards the sternum rather than down towards the belly button. Now this is going to help me just control the length, okay, of the swing. If I go too much into wrist hinge, I've got the ability to start to send the club under that golf ball just a little bit too much, and it's going to come off the top of the face and just come out really, really soft. Okay, so when you get yourself nice and tall for this lie, what that's going to do is get yourself quite close to it. Okay, so you're going to feel really on top of the golf ball, which is absolutely fine. You'll feel much closer than what you're used to. And what we're trying to do here is I'd make sure you keep your weight forward. Okay, so we're not end up with the low point back. Weight stays forward, and you're just trying to maintain that length throughout the swing. No changing of the wrist angles or deviation. Really just trying to focus on clipping the ball off the top there. And you'll notice how my arms are quite straight. They are straight and they're staying straight throughout the motion. Okay, so keeping the length constant. You'll notice this comes out a bit more of the center of the club face, and we actually get the contact that we're looking for, and it'll come out a little bit hotter, won't come out as soft. All right, now you can start to think about club selection here as well. You've got basically, I use my 56 there because I'm relatively short-sided to the pin here. But what you could do is use a little bit less loft if needed. The more loft, obviously, the more laid back the face. Okay, so the more danger you've got of it coming off the top of the face. So you can even think about pitching wedges 50 degree, depending on the scenario in front of you. So if you've got a bit more green to work with, I'd certainly advise going less loft. It's a much easier movement to make rather than you try to have to hit a 56 or a 60 degree, for example, too hard and then end up not quite making the contact you're looking for anyway. Okay, so that's the first scenario you're going to get in the rough. Now we're going to talk about the one that sat down slightly and what you'd expect to see and how we then can start to adapt to that. Okay, the one that sat down, this will need a slight different approach because, again, think about it as like the ball is underneath the surface, right? So this will require a club head or a low point that is working under the ground a little more. Okay, now we obviously don't want to work it under to a point where it keeps going this way. It's got to get in there and then out again pretty quick, okay? So this is where the approach would be slightly different. If we played it in a way where we're gonna go, what you said, sort of Bryson, long arms, long thumbs, and kept it across the top, it would come out more like a thin, right? So you'll end up kind of like thinning it and topping it all the way through the green, right? Because the club just hasn't got down enough, right? So we just pop that back down again. So what we need to do here is create an environment where this club head, like I said, is working more down into the golf ball, but then it comes back up again, okay? So I always like to think of it as, everyone thinks about kind of where the club enters, right? But we've got to make sure it's got an exit plan as well. It's got to get out of the rough at the same time, because otherwise we're just going to end up driving it too much this way, okay? So sat down, this is going to need more of like a little bit of a pop, okay? Now this time I'm going to set up with a little bit of a lower handle here, okay? Because it allows me then to release the wrist angles a little bit more into the ground, right? So the club can go under the surf a little bit. I've actually gone for more loft here. So I've actually got my 60-degree here over this slightly shorter sided shot, because I'm ultimately going to be steepening the attack angle, increasing the speed a little bit of this because I need to get the club head working down more. So therefore I'm going to counteract some of that with a little bit more loft. So it means I can just be a little bit more aggressive with that popping motion into the ball and not feel like I've got to take some off it with my 56 or even 50 degree, okay? So I've got a bit more loft. I actually like to open the club face on this again to just give me support of the fact I know I've got to introduce a bit more speed, so the loft is going to give me that softness. And I always play this sort of middle to back. My weight still stays forward, okay, because I still want the low point forward. I'm not trying to hit here. Anything behind the golf ball, again, we're going to sort of bounce off and top it, okay? So really making sure I stay forward, and I'm just working this club head down into the ground a little more. Getting to like the roots of the grass is a good way of thinking about it. So I'm going to just pop this in, make sure it's got an exit plan as well, right? Don't just think about how it comes in. Make sure it comes out of the ground at the same time. There we go. And it pops up nice and soft. Oh, good effort that. All right. Little key here. Notice how my follow through is quite short. All right. It's not up here. Okay. So that will start to lift the club out of the ground too early. If I keep the club head low to the ground, it's working down and under the ground a bit better. But again, it's high enough that it's come out of the grass, right? It's not stayed in the grass. So that's what you can expect out of those two lies, and two very different ways of adapting to that. So make sure you can get as close as you can to the pin. So just, rather than thinking it's a stock out the rough kind of shot, have a look how the ball's sitting, analyse kind of, okay, what's this going to do? And then what clubs and options have I got available to me to be able to get it as close as I can. Now we're going to move on to a barer lie, okay? So we're getting in the winter in the UK here, we're going to start to get some mud lies, but this would also run true then when you get into the summer and the more bare, tight mud lies. Okay, bare lies. So we can hear it's still quite firm, that, right? So biggest thing with these is just contact point. I think people get really, really scared of this type of lie. Now, typically, when golfers are struggling on this lie, the golf club is simply hitting the ground way too early, okay? It bounces up, ends up thinning it, right? Or they're working the club under the ground for way too long. And again, it would just bounce off the surface and really, really poor contacts. We've got to make sure this low point is far enough forward, okay? But again, very similar to like the rough where the ball's sitting on the top, we're going to approach it very similar to that because we want to keep the length and the radius of the swing the most constant we can to get the best contact off of this bare lie. We don't want things working under too much. Okay, it's a much harder terrace shot to do that and get it right. Now, in terms of club selection, it's going to be completely subject to the distance you're hitting the shot, right, and how much green you've got to work with. And we're going to go through two scenarios now. First one is relatively short-sided. It's a relatively standard chip, and I've got a little bit of green to work with. And I'm going for my 50 degree here, where I feel like it's enough loft. I don't need to use more loft to stop it. And I'm going to go with a very similar approach like I did for the sat-up one, right? So longer thumbs, straighter arms. Ball's going to stay back of centre. I'm going to feel like my weight is much more forward, and I'm just going to try and work that club back and forwards. And my key kind of here is the right arm stays straight, or the arm stays straight throughout this whole motion. And as long as I get a nice ball first contact, okay, I don't have to worry about the club bouncing. As long as I keep my arms straight that radius is going to be managed really well. So you see I can just get it off that tight lie really nicely, and I've got no worries about that club wanting to work into the mud for too long. And as long as I don't obviously move my weight or pressure back, I'm not going to hit the ground and bounce it off and thin it, okay? So if you are the golfer that struggles with that thin shot off this lie, you're probably doing that, right? You're probably working the club, or yourself back, hitting the ground early, bounces off, hits the top of the golf ball and off it goes, right? That's the one that really hurts people's score. So secondly, if we're now going to go to a pin that is a little bit further, I'm just going to grab my, my 8-iron here, and what I would simply do is, if we've got to get the club to lengthen out, or so the shot to lengthen out a little bit more, just change club, right? We've got so much green to work with here that I don't need to try and hit any loft 56, 50 degrees to try and carry it half to 3/4 of the way. I can just get an 8-iron, 7-iron, whatever it is you feel would be better, and just bump it in there. Let the loft of the club do the work. If you need to change height and trajectory of your golf ball, use your clubs first. It is the easiest thing to do. Rather than trying to change too much what you do with technique, use the tools, okay? Use all your clubs. 8-iron is going to launch lower, roll more than a 50 degree, for example, okay? Very, very simple. You might just need to practice it to obviously get used to it, but same thing again. I'm going to go long radius, okay? Balls back, weights forward. I'm just trying to nip this off the top, keep everything pretty constant, and it just runs out there nicely, and I've got nothing to worry about in terms of a contact point of view. It's really easy for me to just keep that length and the radius the same, and I'm going to make the contact on the ground the same every time, and I'm not running the risk of changing the low point too much. So there's the first 2 examples around the green. Now we're going to go into a little bit of slopes. So we're going to talk about up slopes, down slopes, the effect that's going to have on the golf ball, and 2 or 3 really easy things you can do to adapt your technique to suit those slopes. Now, one of the worst ones, in a divot. Does your nut in, doesn't it? Now, we're coming into the UK into winter, we're going to get lucky with some winter rules, but let's assume obviously we can't do that because we can't all the time. So when the ball lands in a divot, the ball is now underneath the surface much more than it was, okay? So something I like to do here is get the club toe down, okay? So I would call this the toe down shot. We're trying to address the golf ball with almost the heel off of the ground. So the club is going to go even more vertical than what we had it when we were trying to clip it off the top, okay? Reason being, because the rounded edge of the golf club is a much smaller area than this whole surface of the club face. So we can get this little shaved off bit of the toe into the divot much easier. Whereas when you've got the full blade here, it's much harder to get that down and out of the divot, all right, as quick as possible. Because I would expect this to come out quite hot. It's going to come out quite hot, it's going to run more. So we need to do something to soften it up. And the toe of the golf club is the softest part of the golf club to use. So we can actually get clever with what part of the golf club we're using here to hit it out of, to slow down the ball speed for us when we're ultimately going to have to hit a shot that's going to come out quite quick, okay? So setup wise, really upright, again, toe down, try and really feel the heels off of the ground. Balls back so I can get some downward attack to it. And I am actually physically addressing the golf ball out of the toe here. Okay, it is literally off the grooves, and I am trying to make contact out of the toe, and I'm trying to make the toe of the club glide through the surface, okay, and into the back of the ball. Now, because we've got the ball underneath, when we're hitting out the toe, just a little side note, we can hit into the back of the ground, and the club isn't going to dig, okay? It's going to prevent it from going underneath the surface too much, okay? So really upright, toe down. As always, I feel like my weight's forward and I'm more forward of the golf ball to ensure better low point. And I am trying to physically hit this out of the toe. We get some nice, good contact there, and it actually comes out quite dead, okay? So that actually shot on a little bit, come out a bit hot like I said it would. So I need to adapt my landing area accordingly. But to be honest, out of a divot, if I've got that to 10 feet, I'm pretty happy with that result. Okay, so divots, toe down, get that toe working through the surface. You'll find that club will glide through there really nicely. Okay, the last one we're going to talk about is pine needles. Now here at Woburn, we're playing obviously a lot of trees, and this time of year the needles start to fall and we get them blown around a little bit. Now it doesn't have to be pine needles, it could be any sort of debris, grass cuttings, it could be leaves, anything like that. But you can use this as an example of where the ball is sat up on a surface that's really soft and spongy underneath. So the way to think about this is a bunker, okay? So we can look at it more like a bunker shot, where you've got to learn to control the entry point and also the depth of your low point at the same respect, so we don't get that club working underneath the golf ball too long and ultimately the ball coming out the top of the face and not coming out. Think about those shots in the bunker where you end up taking too much sand, the club just kind of, the ball splashes off the top of the face and just doesn't quite come out, okay? So we're going to look at this as more like a bunker shot. Now I've got a bit more distance to cover here because typically you're going to find this a little bit further away, but really I'd set up now a little bit closer to a bunker shot where my stance is going to get a touch wider. I wouldn't go as wide as a bunker shot, okay? I'm going to have the face slightly open and the handle slightly lower as a result of me being slightly wider, okay? And then from there, again, I'm now going to think about sort of the sand, weights forward, and I'm trying to imagine I'm playing out of a bunker. I'm going to keep that club above the surface, not let it go underneath, because the more it goes underneath, again, using the bunker as the relationship here, the more it's going to get caught between the face and the ball, and it just doesn't come out, okay? So, a little bit wider stance. Still, as always, got weight forward. Okay, I've opened the face, I've got the handle back a little bit, and I'm playing this similar to how I would my bunkers. Okay, keep that club moving across the surface. And we get that nice contact there, and you can see how then kept everything accelerating through that shot. I've not stalled at the bottom of it and kept that speed up, kept the club moving. And that's why I opened the face there a little bit as well, because obviously I've got to create quite a bit of speed with the distance of shot that I'm hitting. Okay, so pine needles or debris, leaves, things like when you ever think about the ball sitting up on soft surfaces, think about it more like a bunker shot when you're in and around the greens. Right guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that's give you some idea of how you can approach some different lies around the green, what to expect, and how then you adapt to get the best result possible. Always think about how the lie is going to affect the ball and what you need to do. It's a great way of looking at it. If there's any more lies that you guys really struggle with and you want some more information on, please comment below, let me know what they are, and I'll do some more videos on them for you. If you like what I'm doing here, please throw me a thumbs up, and as always, really appreciate anyone that subscribes to the channel, because it helps me create more content, help you guys play better golf.